How's it going, everyone? It is Anime Outlet, and this is part 4 of What If Manga Deku Went Back in Time. And now, before we begin, I would just like to ask you all to please put your What If suggestions down in the comments section below. And now, let's begin. Izuku's fist slams right into the helmet of All For One, shattering it instantly. As he grabs his head in pain, he looks on, staring daggers right on at Izuku. He would get up after falling down to the ground before looking on at Izuku. So I guess it's gonna have to be that way. However, before All For One could even finish his sentence, he would be punched right across the face once again by Izuku, and then once more right under the chin, sending his head staring upwards, where you would then see the fist of Izuku flying down, slamming, making contact right onto All For One's face once again. One would then feel a flurry of punches make contact with his stomach, so he would stare into Izuku continue on his flurry of punches, making sure that All For One didn't even have any time to move or react. As Izuku was doing this, he would then look back, turning his hand before flicking, causing the chairs under Bakugo and Todoroki to both be destroyed. As both of them now up and with the quirk-canceling handcuffs off of them, they would both use their quirks against the League of Villains, as they were now fighting the League while Izuku was fighting All For One. As the shaking and rumbling of the city would end up occurring, news helicopters and police cars would end up rolling up to the scene. However, the cars on the ground couldn't make it due to just destroyed buildings all around the fighting zone. As Izuku, in the midst of his fight with All For One and Bakugo and Todoroki fighting the League, they had caused just the destruction of many abandoned buildings around them, basically causing for no one to be able to get through there with a car. However, the helicopter scene would be able to capture everything right in the midst of the fight. As we now cut back to see all of Class 1A staring on at someone's phone who is watching the news live, seeing their three classmates go up head-to-head against some of the most threat they've ever faced at UA. As Izuku could be staring at All For One, he would then start to laugh before cracking his knuckles. So I guess you really are the 9th user of One For All. It's quite a shame that the One For All trail's gonna have to end here, isn't it, Izuku? All For One would say in a striking voice, as Izuku would look up at All For One. I always knew my son would end up becoming a star. However, I didn't know he'd actually be One For All's holder. However, it does boggle the mind knowing that you had One For All since you were right around the age of 4. Not sure if you accidentally ate one of All Might's hairs or something stupid like that. But you somehow found out how to get One For All. I don't understand you. What about that, huh? I don't understand my own son. Well, who cares now, anyway? All For One would say, reaching out his hand, grabbing onto Izuku's head. Izuku's still so shocked to find out that All For One was his own father. Izuku just didn't understand it. However, as he would feel One For All flowing out of him, however, it would instantly go right back into him. Izuku would punch All For One right in the stomach. You can't take One For One. I thought that was quite easy to understand for you. But I guess it wasn't, Izuku would say, before flying back over towards All For One, using Black Whip to pull All For One closer to him while doing this, before punching All For One once again right in the face, before punching him in the stomach once more. All Might would then jump down, still in the middle of his prime, punching All For One right across the face, as we now see Mirio following so far behind him, having just been taught by All Might how to use One For All. As we now One For All, the 9th user of this universe, Mirio, the 8th user, All Might, and the real 9th user, Deku, all fighting All For One at once. Just the middle of a battle going on. It was just the battle of the ages. However, right as All For One was in this, he would then start laughing. I don't understand it, but somehow there's 3 One For All users standing in front of me. Well then, Shigaraki, All for One snaps as Shigaraki appears right in front of him. "You're gonna have to do this fight from now on, 'cause I'm not gonna make it anymore. My body has already started giving up on me. So now, you're the one calling all the shots," All for One would say, as his body would then start quickly deteriorating, or just all of his flesh and muscle would turn to dust, as only there stood just a pile of bones. So those quickly too disintegrated, disappearing without a trace. As Shigaraki would be standing there now feeling so much power flow through to his bones, as he would then start laughing maniacally. He had all the power he wanted in his hands. He wasn't injured like that fool All for One was. He now had every right and control to do whatever he so chose to do. As Shigaraki would continue on laughing, his head would violently turn towards Mirio before reaching out his hand, grabbing Mirio. So Mirio was forced to rush right towards Shigaraki, as if Shigaraki was using some kind of discount version of the Force. As Mirio would be standing there, Shigaraki using this telekinetic power would then come right up to Shigaraki, would then grab his neck. As Mirio would be looking on desperately towards All Might and Izuku, using his eyes to beg for help. They could only do nothing but watch, as Mirio would then be crushed down into a tiny little cube before having it thrown right across the city. So All Might would look on at his successor completely killed. He would rush right over towards Shigaraki, winding his fist back, punching Shigaraki right in the gut. However, it did nothing at all. Shigaraki would laugh towards All Might. "When will you learn, All Might? You're not ever going to be able to defeat every villain. And now it's time for you to join your successor in the tower I'm gonna start creating out of all my victims," Shigaraki would say, using his kinetic power, grabbing onto All Might, crushing him down into a cube, throwing him back in the direction where Mirio was as well. Izuku staring and Shigaraki would then rush towards Shigaraki, whose back was turned, as he would punch Shigaraki right across the face, as Shigaraki would then turn towards Izuku, punching him as well, both with such equal power. Izuku and Shigaraki were both in their prime, using over 100% of their power to fight each other, as Izuku would punch Shigaraki and Shigaraki would punch Izuku. They were in the middle of a fight, and every blow would not go without another blow, or say Izuku sent a punch, it would either be blocked or landed. However, after that, Shigaraki would send a punch as well. They were equaling each other out, and it was clear that no one was going to come out of this fight victorious. So as Shigaraki would continue on fighting Izuku, Bakugo and Todoroki, who had just finished their fight with Dabi, would end up rushing on to help Izuku out, freezing Shigaraki. However, he would easily break free of the ice, easily sending a wave of energy, knocking out Todoroki. So Bakugo would then use his explosions to get in close to Shigaraki. However, Izuku would dive in, catching Bakugo. "Bakugo, don't be rash here. Shigaraki's power far outnumbers yours. You will die if you continue on this fight." "Fine. If it means I'll go down as a hero, then I'm willing to go for that cause." Izuku only smiled before staring on at Shigaraki. "Well, fine then," he would say, as they would then both rush on over towards Shigaraki, as both of them would go for a punch, Izuku using one for all, Bakugo using his explosion, as both of their punches would land right directly on the forehead of Shigaraki, as they would then direct their punch downwards, slamming the body of Shigaraki right into the ground. As this would be happening, Shigaraki would get up, uppercutting both of them in the stomach before slamming them back down into the ground. However, Izuku would then jump back, grabbing Bakugo before grabbing him by the foot, as Izuku would then start jumping back and forth, carrying Bakugo at the same time, before you'd throw Bakugo right towards Shigaraki, as Bakugo would then create a massive explosion, creating a huge cloud of dust, as Izuku would continue jumping back and forth quickly, as fast as he could. All of a sudden, he would stop before staring directly where he thought Shigaraki was. Crouching down on his feet, he would then rush over, using his kinetic energy core, launching himself right at Shigaraki with velocity of over 1000% of what One For All could do. As Izuku would be flying so fast, he would land a direct punch right onto Shigaraki's face, completely destroying it, shattering Shigaraki's jaw and the upper part of his skull. Shigaraki would fall down to the ground, all of his teeth laying on before him. He would barely be able to get up as the healing quirk that he had gotten from For One wasn't doing anything. It just couldn't keep up with how fast he was getting injured. As would stand up, barely being able to move, Izuku would then look on towards Shigaraki. That punch I just did to you, Shigaraki. No matter how strong your regeneration quirk is, you're not going to be able to live from those injuries, Izuku would say, pointing it out. As Shigaraki would be staring at Izuku, he would then create a massive cloud of just complete dark energy. Well then, I'm not going to go down without killing you, either, he would say. However, right behind him, Bakugo would come up, slamming both of his hands right into the sides of Shigaraki's already broken skull, slamming 2 explosions right into there, as he would then fall down to the ground, completely just brain dead from all the injuries to the head. As Izuku and Bakugo would then fall down to the ground, completely void of all energy. They just couldn't move anymore. After all those months of competing with each other, it actually turned into somewhat of a rivalry, and the hatred towards one another had just dissipated completely when they were fighting for their lives. As we now see many heroes rush in, grabbing the dead Shigaraki and grabbing both Izuku and Bakugo, along with Todoroki rushing them off towards the hospital. We cut forward a week to see Izuku waking up, holding onto his head as his head would start throbbing and pounding in pain. As Izuku would look around, he would see all of his classmates surrounding him, as Izuku would only just laugh. Well, luckily, both me and Bakugo had managed to stop this world's greatest threat. Finally. All my work is finally complete, Izuku would say, before falling back asleep, just not caring about anything. We now cut forward a month to see Izuku walking into Night Eye's agency. Izuku had easily passed the hero licensing exam, or quirk licensing exam, along with helping Bakugo to pass it this time, after their rivalry had turned into sort of a brotherly bond towards them. Izuku would help Bakugo turn his anger and just turn it into something that would help him in the battlefield. So we now see Izuku taking a work study, as would then tell Night Eye the exact location of Overhaul's base. That's his base, right there. It should be quite easy to take down, don't you think? Well, without Mirio and All Might, this would be quite hard. Too bad they had to die in that fight. But at least their contribution didn't go just without any consequences towards that fiend Shigaraki, of course. So, what do you think we should do about this Overhaul's base? What do you think, Izuku? Oh, I just think we should just rush it immediately. I don't think it needs too much planning. I mean, I did take out Shigaraki, so that's one thing. And I don't think Overhaul can possibly manage to be stronger than him. Yeah, you may have a point there. You know, I'm gonna plan something, but I'm not gonna stop you from doing anything else foolish, since I really can't stop you. Night Eye would say, as Izuku would only nod his head, as Izuku would then suit up into his hero costume before walking around the streets, where he knew the exact time and date where Eri would end up rushing out of the hallway. As this would happen, she would bump into Izuku, as Izuku would then look down at her. Oh, hello there, as Overhaul would then turn the corner. Come on, Eri, he would say in a cold voice, as she would get up scared, looking on at Izuku, begging for help, as Izuku would then grab onto her shoulder. Hey, young lady, is this man your father, or guardian of yours? She would look onto him, just completely scared for what he had done. Overhaul would look back, staring right on at Izuku, staring at him with such intensity. However, Izuku didn't care at all. I know your whole problem, Overhaul, and I'm here to take back this little girl and give her a life she truly deserves. Overhaul would rush towards Izuku, taking off his glove to try to touch him. However, Izuku would only dodge this, grabbing onto Overhaul's neck, throwing him into a building behind him. As a store clerk would see Overhaul slam into some of his shelves, he then sees Izuku walk in. Sorry about this. I'll pay for it later. Izuku would say, staring on towards the knocked out Overhaul, putting on clerk-canceling handcuffs onto him. Thankfully, he wasn't on guard too much, so he went down without a fight. Izuku would then kick the body of Overhaul right into Night Eye's office, who would stare down at it as Izuku would then introduce Eri. Overhaul would be seen there as Night Eye would only just start laughing. You are an anomaly, Izuku. As we now cut forward just years into the future, with Izuku's knowledge just having been faded behind, as he just had basically no need to have any of the knowledge of the past anymore, since he's now 21 years old and the number 1 hero, as Bakugo Katsuki would be the number 2 hero and Todoroki Shoto would be the number 3 hero. These three, as the big 3 heroes, would just rule against Japan's just villains all throughout time, making sure that these villains never would rise up again, as the crime rate would drop below 1% with the reign of these top 3 heroes. And that is where What If Manga Deku Went Back in Time comes to an end. I'm sorry this series was kind of short for me, only 4 parts, and it was only like an hour and 45 minutes. So I'm sorry about that, but yeah, I thank you all for watching this series. I hope you all did enjoy it. And yeah, I thank you all for watching once again, and goodbye.